my plate. All right. So here's my kind of thought that I want to put to my sermon tonight. Our wants dictate the outcome of our needs. I'm going to say that one more time, because I need that to be really embedded in you. Our wants dictate the outcome of our needs. Has life ever not met your expectations before? Has that happened to anyone besides me? Okay. Tell you a story that literally just happened to me. I had a friend come to me at work, and he said, hey, I want to see if we can put together a computer that would be around $1,500. And I'm like, challenge accepted. So I start putting all these components together in a cart, and I'm just having fun thinking he just wants to see the number price and see what we can add in there. And I start putting all this stuff in there, and he literally goes into his wallet, pulls out his wallet, and gives me his credit card. I'm like, you serious? And I'm like, dude, I can't do that. That's a lot of money. I'm not putting your credit card information in there. Long story short, he buys all this stuff. It comes in. Everybody's excited. We're in the back. We're putting stuff together. I actually had to go to Houston, and so Jesse and this guy, they get everything nice and pretty. I come back to work that weekend. I actually came back to Morgan City and went to the office to help turn this thing online. We plug everything in. We hit the power button. All the lights came on. It was beautiful. Yeah, it's a beautiful computer. Everything's got LED lights. It's just lit up, and it's like, like, you got to understand, we are completely geeked out at this moment. Like, we're waiting for the screen on the monitor to turn on. Like, it's that moment of expectation. And then it reboot. And I looked at him and said, it's okay. It's okay. It's probably just, figuring out all the components, let it get its thing. It's going to come back up. It comes back online. All the lights came back on again. It's beautiful. But this time, all the lights turn red. And I'm like, that can't be right. I'm like, that's not a coincidence that every light just turned red. I'm like, that's not good. That's not good. 4.5 hours later of searching through Google documents, of trying to figure out what this random error code meant, because it has an error code on the board. We're like, we're going to figure this out. It's simple. It's simple. It's simple. It wasn't simple. We tried multiple other devices, and long story short, we ended up breaking the board. Thank God for warranty, send it off. Ta-da! Anyway, so life didn't exactly meet my expectations. Even in the moment of seeing something happening, it didn't come out the way we was expecting, and it cost us a little bit more than what we wanted. And this is where I kind of got this thought for our sermon tonight, right? Our wants dictate the outcome of our needs. Oftentimes, the wants that we have in our life will determine the outcome of the need that we actually wanted to start off with. And we will have all these different wants and excitements, but then it doesn't show up the way that we actually need it to show up. And oftentimes when God shows up, he's checking us out to see if our wants are lining up to our needs. So I want to read one of the last recorded miracles found in the book of Mark with you tonight. And most of you are going to remember this story when you hear it. But it's Mark chapter 10, verse 46. It says, when they reached Jericho, and Jesus and his disciples left town, and a large crowd followed him, and a blind beggar named Bartimaeus was sitting beside the road. How many of y'all know this amazing story in the Bible? Well, let me set all this up for you. Mark chapter 1 through 9, is all about the life and ministry of Jesus. We see all kind of different miracles. We see Jesus being born. We see Jesus growing up. We see Jesus starting his ministry. And then we see all these cool things happening. And all this is taking place in an area called Galilee. And this is where Jesus does all of Mark chapter 1 through Mark chapter 9. Is in the area of Galilee and all through that region. Mark chapter 10 is the trip from Galilee to Jerusalem. And then from Mark 11 to Mark 16 happens all around either Jerusalem or in the small surrounding area of Jerusalem. So this is kind of the context of where we're at. We're kind of right dead center of the story of Jesus. And he's making his way to show everyone who he is and that he's the Messiah. And they get to that awesome place called Jericho. The walls of Jericho, right? Although it has the same name as the walls of Jericho, it's not quite the same Jericho. It is Jericho. It is the same Jericho that the walls fell down, but they moved the city. And so the city was slightly moved from where it originally was built, but now it's a lot larger, it's a lot bigger, and it's a lot crazier. So as crazy as it was when the Israelites had to walk around it and shout for it to fall down, it's even crazier when Jesus shows up on the scene. And so Jericho had a reputation of being a bad place. If you remember the story of the Good Samaritan, it happened on the road to Jericho, right? So Jericho was a really, really tough town. And Jesus wasn't really going there for no other reason than it was the right route to take for Passover. So from Galilee to Jerusalem, you had to go through Jericho. And Jericho was not an easy travel. Jericho was about 2,000 feet higher in elevation than Jerusalem, which means you had to have a nice hike up and then a treacherous walk down. Because it's not like we have today where they go and level out the roads and make everything nice and smooth to get where you got to go. You'd have had some portion of the travel where you actually had to come down portions of hills and mountainsides. Sounds fun, right? This was life in their day, though. So this is where we're at. We're in this crazy place. It's kind of the last major city on the way to Jerusalem. Then we see there's a large crowd following Jesus. If you were here, you know that Jesus had a large group of disciples. At one point, he sent 70 disciples away, but he had a very small group of people with him. These were mostly not his disciples, though. This crowd would have been the entire crowd of all of Israel of kind of building up on the way down to Jerusalem for the Passover. So when this says a large crowd, this would have been a large crowd. This wasn't just some like, hey, this is some of those cool things when Jesus is going around and he's got a lot of people with him. This would have been massive amounts of people that were all on their way down to Jerusalem. And as they're seeing Jesus on his way down, they're seeing him do some amazing things. They're like, this is a road trip and entertainment. This is great, right? So they're just going to follow Jesus everywhere as it goes because it was getting more and more interesting. So there would have been a lot of people that were following Jesus in this crowd that were there for the show. And there would have been some of those who had been following Jesus all the way since Galilee and seeing everything God was doing. So you have to understand the context of the crowd. The crowd wasn't just a bunch of Jesus-loving people. Some of them were strictly there because it was an interesting person to be around. Okay? Then we see in the story this guy, the blind beggar named Bartimaeus. Bartimaeus literally translates to son of Timaeus, which means son of the unclean. So Bartimaeus, we got Bartimaeus here. His name literally means that he is the son of the unclean, and he's chilling on the side of the road in Jericho, and this Jesus guy's coming into town, and all of a sudden he finds out that the crowd is a little bit more than what it normally is. And so Bartimaeus would not have been the only guy on the side of the road. Literally every lame and hurt and disabled person in all of Jericho would have been lined up outside to find out if they could get a little something extra because a large crowd was coming through town. And so I don't want you to mess this up in your mind and think, well, all this is by coincidence, because it's not. And Bartimaeus would not have been the lone guy sitting out there blind. He'd have probably had Tim and Joe with him too. Actually, they would have been known as Tim and Joe. This would have been blind guy 1, blind guy 2. Because in their culture, this is very strange that Bartimaeus even had a name. Oftentimes, if a child was born with a deficiency, they weren't even given a name, they were just discarded because they had no value. So Bartimaeus is stuck in a situation with no value. Can you imagine how Bartimaeus had to even feel, though? He's like, well, I'm kind of named after my dad. I'm son of Timaeus. I'm the unclean kid. So at some point, as he was coming forth, his parents must have thought, well, man, maybe our kid, maybe he's foresighted and he's going to grow out of it. Maybe he's nearsighted, he's going to grow out of it. And so they went ahead and gave him a name, but at some point they realized that he was blind. And he would have no longer had purpose, and he would have been stuck on the side of the road. Along with blind guy 1, blind guy 2, leopard 4, leopard 72, lame 62. Right? I'm trying to paint this picture so you really understand it. These people had no names. They were literally just there hoping to get something. They all had a want. But the question is, was their wants going to meet up to their needs? And in our lives, there's a lot of us that often go through life feeling like we might not exactly have the purpose we expected. We oftentimes feel like we don't have the outcome we desired. And we might feel like Bartimaeus sitting on the side of the road, and we just feel like another number in the crowd. Has anyone ever felt like just another number in the crowd, or another number in the church, with another prayer request that wasn't answered, another need that wasn't met? I'm just being real, because we go through these things in life. If we're going to be truthful about the church, sometimes there's great things in the church, and sometimes we sit back and we see God doing amazing miracles, and we're waiting on ours. Bartimaeus was in that number. Verse 47. When Bartimaeus heard that Jesus of Nazareth was nearby, he began to shout, "Jesus, Son of David, have mercy on me." If you got a real Bible, or if you're using even your electronic Bible, if you can figure out, it's like screen capture this and circle heard. Because there's something that's amazing about that. One thing we know about Bartimaeus is he did have something wrong with him. He could not see. He could not see anything. And if he would have been strictly relying on what he couldn't do, he would have lost the understanding that he had something that he could do. And that was here. Bartimaeus could have been stuck in his problem and focused on the fact that he couldn't see in front of him, and he required someone to give him what he needed. But in the crowd, he realized that I could at least hear. And when he heard that this dude had a big crowd with him, he's like, I wonder if that's the Jesus dude. The same one who raised Lazarus from the dead. Because Lazarus wasn't far from Jericho. And so Bartimaeus was probably in the crowd thinking, I know it's Passover. I know it's kind of normal for a lot of people to come. But everybody out here is really excited because this is an abnormally large crowd. And I'm going to make sure that I'm being very cautious to listen to what's going on around me. And like we were singing that song, in the stillness, in the quiet places, is when we oftentimes have to listen, but it's the hardest time to listen when it's loud. So can you imagine blind Bartimaeus and a number of lame and injured people sitting on the side of the crowd? I can see the ones they could see were probably screaming out, "Hey, not Jesus, Son of David." They're like, "Hey, hey, your boy's hungry. Your boy, I ain't ate in 3 days, man. Can't you tell? Starving." They had the other guys hanging with the signs. And I mean, everything was going crazy. And all these people would have been shouting for their wants, not necessarily their needs. Y'all seeing the difference? So there's a number of people out there that are shouting, but yet Bartimaeus has to turn his ear to find out exactly who is on their way. And he finds out Jesus is coming. And so he's like, oh, whoa, hold up. Everything just changed. Because I picture this in my own mind. Because I believe Bartimaeus in the beginning was shouting what his needs were. What his wants were. I can see him at first. He's like, "Hey, help me out. Brother's blind. Somebody had to walk me out here today. I think they gave me steak, but it didn't taste like steak. It tastes like leather. I don't know what that was. Pretty sure somebody's flip-flop. It didn't come out right either. I don't know what happened. I'm a little backed up. Can somebody help me out?" And I know, this is just how I read the Bible, so it makes sense to me. And so I'm listening, I'm reading it, and this is what I'm seeing. We don't know this for a fact, but I just know how the times worked. And I don't see Bartimaeus as being the only guy in the crowd that's being quiet. But there was something that changed when he knew who was walking in the crowd. And this is when he shouts. I love that. He doesn't sit back and say, hey, did anybody see that dude Jesus? I'm trying. I can't. Did you see him? I can't see him. You saw Jesus, didn't you? Did you see him? Psst, psst, psst. Blind too. Where's Steve? He can see, but he can't hear. I don't know. I don't know. And so that's not what he does, though. Bartimaeus is like, Jesus, Son of David. I searched that term, Son of David. The only other people to reference him that was the angels and others in need. When the people would reference him, they say, Jesus, could he be the Son of David? That's how most of them reference it. Possibly the Son of David. But there's a few people with needs in the days of Jesus that would call out and say, Jesus, Son of David, I know who you are. I might be visibly blind. I might not be able to see in front of my own nose, but I know who you are because I can sense something in the atmosphere that's different than anything else around me. And Bartimaeus is like, hey, I don't have to see you to know who you are. And I wish there were some Christians today that would realize that you ain't got to see him to know who he is. And he's like, Son of David, have mercy on me. Son of David, you got to be the same one that they've been talking about, who took Lazarus when they took away his organs out of his body and they separated him in the tomb, yet Lazarus walked out. In case you didn't know, that's what happened to Lazarus. It wasn't just he died and he came a couple of days later. The process of Lazarus was they literally removed the organs of his body and then stashed him in one part of the grave and his organs in another part of the grave, because they would come in later and remove the organs and clean out the grave cells, and they left the bodies out in the back. But when Jesus showed up, somehow or another, the things in the jars show back up inside of Lazarus' body, and he come hopping out the tomb. And there's a blind man that heard about the story, because it's the one thing he knew how to do was listen. Because he couldn't focus on his needs and see them. He could only listen to the things that were going on around him. And sometimes we got to learn how to stop looking at all the mess around us and learn how to listen to what Jesus is trying to tell us. So instead of being focused on your problems and focusing with your eyes, you need to learn how to shut your eyes and get into a still place and open your ears. All right. Jesus, Son of David. Son of David. What you have to understand about that statement and the power in that statement is what I told you earlier about Bartimaeus' name. Son of the unclean. Or the ways the Greeks would have looked at this, it would have been the Gentiles. His name literally meant those who can't be in the presence of God. The unclean can't be in the presence of God. You shouldn't even be saying the word Son of David. You shouldn't even be able to utter his presence because of your name. And how often do we feel like we can't say what we're supposed to say and do what we're supposed to do because there's someone whispering in our ear and pointing out the fact that we've made mistakes and that we've messed up and that we're not who we're supposed to be. Don't you remember what you did? Don't you know your name? Your name is Bartimaeus. You are unclean. You have been a screw up your whole life. You have not been able to do what you were called to do. Your parents disowned you. Why would you even speak his name? And not only were the voices in his head, but the voices were in the crowd, because verse 48 says, "Be quiet." Many of the people yelled at him. but he shouted the louder. I love this dude because this is what we go through in our lives. The people that are often around us are the ones who tell us to shut up first. And sometimes you just got to ignore your best friend who keeps pointing out how many times you messed up and why your marriage is all a shamble and why your kids are crazy. They just kids. I'm going to help you out. Youth pastor for 18 years. I ain't never seen a good teenager. Including me. They just crazy. You were too. It's all good. And if you said you wasn't, I'll have an altar call and we'll relieve that demon out of you. But listen. It's oftentimes the people that are around us that are going to tell us to be quiet when we're expecting God to do something. It's because they can't see what we can hear. They don't know that time you spent in the Bible when no one else was around you. They don't know that prayer that you prayed that morning when you were desperate and you couldn't do anything better. They don't know those tears that you cried in the middle of your problem. They don't know what happened to you at work that day and when no one wanted to help you out and you were stuck doing it all by yourself. They don't know the sacrifice that you've been making where you've been given and you didn't have it to give. They don't know what you've been doing in the quiet place when you shut your eyes and you listen to what God's instructing you to do. Bartimaeus understood that it wasn't about anything else but listening to God. So he shouted louder because that he could hear. He didn't have to get louder because of the people. He had to get louder for his ears. Oh, I got to say that again. Y'all, some of y'all got that. Some of y'all didn't. I said he didn't have to get loud because the people around him got loud. He had to get loud so his ears could block out the noise. And sometimes we got to learn how to get loud enough to block out the noise. Let's keep going. He shouted all the louder, "Son of David, have mercy on me." When Jesus heard him, he stopped. Yeah, y'all gotta go with me to picture this with me, okay? Because I just sat back and I started imagining this moment. They had to be at the time probably at least 100 or so people out there with a need. And you do not think that Jesus knew every one of them? He was passing through. You mean to tell me that the same Jesus that got in the boat and went across just to heal a guy who was filled with demons didn't know that going through Jericho there was going to be some needs? Jesus walking with a crowd of people, some that believed, some were there to spectate, some that were just going to do their duties. It kind of sounds like church. Yep. Here's Jesus. And of all these people, he hears one person's voice. All the needs, hears one person's voice. And he stops. And it wasn't because he said Jesus, but it was his attitude behind Jesus. The Son of David was the key word in there. No different than when we say Jesus and I pray for my meal that I bought from Walmart or that I got from a place around town. My prayers are very simple. Jesus, bless this food, make it nourish to my body, and let me have a healthy life. Amen. Woohoo, eat. When I go to the mission field and I'm eating chicken that I wash them clean and throw in a pot with the feathers left on, with God knows what else, my prayer changes. It goes from Jesus, bless this food, make it nourish to my to Jesus, don't let me get diarrhea. It's different. It changes. I'm being real. I'm being honest. It's a whole different prayer. Whole different prayer. Most of the time, listen to me. Most of the time, our prayers are simple because we don't really believe that our need is all that great. And when I'm praying, what I'm really saying is, Jesus, just let me hang on long enough till I bail myself out. When Bartimaeus prayed, he said, Jesus, I can't do this. I can't fix myself. I have been stuck in this place for too long. I have been living this life for too long. I have been having to have someone guide me by the hand for too long. I am sick of this need. I don't want to have this need anymore. I don't want to walk this life anymore. I need something different about me. Jesus, Son of David, which means that you are the Messiah. You are the one who can heal me. You are the one who came to deliver me. You are the one who can set the captives free. Jesus, I need you to show up. It was a different prayer than, Jesus, it'd be nice if you just help me out and just put a little bit extra money in my bank account. I can deal with the blindness. I just can't handle the bank account empty. It's a different prayer. I love this part. He stopped and said, tell him to come here. Y'all hear me say this all the time. Put some feet to your faith. So they called the blind man, cheer up. Boy, I'd have slapped somebody. I don't care if I can see or not. I'd have been like, no, you didn't just tell me to cheer up. Listen to me, though. Listen to me. Let's put this in perspective. They can be people or it can be stuff. Oftentimes, the people that might be messing you up or the stuff that might be messing you up is oftentimes what God uses to show up. And they are the ones who turn around and say, hey, I know I've been telling you shut up, but he's calling you over. He wants you. Cheer up. And that's how I read that, too. It's like, cheer up, they said. Come on, he's calling you. But look at Bartimaeus' reaction. Bartimaeus threw aside his coat, jumped up, and came to Jesus. He didn't be like, somebody help me. Hey. No, he didn't do that. He can't see. He don't even know where he's going. And he jumped up and took off running. And oftentimes we read this and we get all super spiritual about it. We're like, well, he threw aside his coat to signify that he was throwing away his all. No, he didn't. No, he didn't. He's like, I don't know where I'm going, but I'm coming someplace. And I wish some of us would have that kind of faith to say, God, I don't really know where I'm about to run to, but I'm going to get up and run anyway. Because if you're calling me, if I listen, I can get to where you need to be. There's a cool, I thought about doing this, but I didn't want anybody to run into a chair in case it didn't work. But there's a really cool way to do this. I can make somebody stay in the back room, close their eyes, and start calling them, and you know what? They can find me. Even with their eyes closed. Bartimaeus was like, I ain't waiting. I'm not going to wait for somebody to grab my hand. I'm not waiting for somebody to bring me to him. This man said to come. I'm getting rid of everything, and I'm running. And he takes off. We'll wrap this up. Verse 51. One of my favorite questions in the Bible. What do you want me to do for you? Best question ever. I oftentimes think to myself, what would I do if Jesus audibly spoke to me and says, what do you want me to do? And I'm Bartimaeus, and I'm blind. But I'm like, Ooh, a good steak dinner sounds good. They keep feeding me leather. Man, to be able to be taken care of for the rest of my life and not have a need, that would be good, God. That would be good. If you could just supply and, just make sure that I have a caregiver for the rest of me, that would be good, God. That would be good. Jesus is like, what do you want me to do? What do you want me to do? Your want, oftentimes dictates your need. Your want often dictates your need. Because watch what Bartimaeus wanted him to do. Jesus asked him, and then Bartimaeus responds, my rabbi, the blind man said, I want to see. And Jesus said to him, go, for your faith has healed you. And instantly the man could see, and he followed Jesus down the road. But there's a lot more to that statement than the surface. Because he could have said anything he wanted to say. But to say, I want to see, meant that life was going to change. And all of a sudden, there's going to be a new cost to his life. Oh, y'all, I don't think y'all got that. When he opened his mouth and said, God, my need, my want is to see. What does that change in his needs? Everything. Everything. Now, you can't just sit on the side of the road and wait for somebody to bring you something. Now, you can't beg. Now, you can't stand on the corner. Now, you got what you wanted, so your needs just changed. Because now, you need to go learn how to work. Now, you need to get out into the fields. Now, you got to go provide for yourself. Now, you got to go do something, because now you no longer have something that you can blame, because I've given you what you needed. And this is why oftentimes our wants dictate our needs. Because when we ask God to move, we're oftentimes not asking for what we really needed. And so we're not getting everything that we should get. Because if we got what we're supposed to get, we had no more excuses to not do what Jesus wants us to do. And when he got his sight, it says instantly the man could see. And he followed Jesus down the road. Can you imagine Bartimaeus, blind his whole life, for the first time, gets to walk to Jerusalem, where the temple is, where the Holy of Holies is, and he's got the Messiah leading the way. Wow. Boy, how does that change your needs? Can you imagine? He's in the crowd. He's like, hey, aren't you son of unclean? Yeah, that's me. What happened? Man, I had a need, and Jesus met it. But now I got a new need. You need some help? You need a worker? You need somebody to help you? Yeah. Can you imagine how aggravating Bartimaeus was the rest of that trip? Every field owner on the way to Jerusalem. You got a field? I heard you got a field. Can I help? You need some help? I'm looking for a job. You got a job? Right? It changed everything. And that's how our lives should change whenever God is meeting our needs. We got to go from, God, I need you, to, God, you did something in my life. What can I do? Where can I go? How can I react? And that's when your wants stop becoming your wants, and God starts meeting your needs, because you stop wanting things and you start needing to do something. So I hope that helps you tonight to realize if you need to change your wants so you can need what God wants you to do. Amen. Y'all stand to your feet. I'm going to pray us out. So that was a good little sidetrack? All right, just making sure. Jesus, I thank you for your word. Jesus, I thank you that you came and that you did walk with us and you did talk to us and that you showed us everything we could do. And God, I pray tonight that our wants will truly start to dictate our needs. Because when you meet our needs, we no longer have an excuse to not do what you want us to do. So, God, I pray tonight that you meet every single need so that every single person can do what they're supposed to do. You have called each and every person under the sound of my voice to do something absolutely amazing for you. And tonight, I pray that you meet their needs, whatever it is, Father. Whatever it is. If it's financial, you're making a new way. If it's health, they will be the healthiest they've ever been. God, if it's relationships, you're going to mend them or you're going to end them. God, whatever it is that's in the way, meet your people's needs so that they can begin to do what you called them to do. Bless your people. Help them to live out the life that you called them to live. In Jesus' mighty name, amen.